Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a well-known, a very senior and respected professional from the energy sector from Gurgaon, India, Mr. Sanjay Aggarwal. Sanjay, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Nice to meet
Sanjay,
you.
thank you. Sanjay is an advisor to Fortum Holdings BV. He's also the ex-president of Fortum India. So, Sanjay, before we talk of energy, technology, and sustainability, few questions for you personally. Tell me a little bit about your own journey and what was the inspiration to enter the energy sector?
I think if I were to look back and I start off from when I finished my engineering college in 86,
Mm,
at that point of time, frankly, I had no, I would say, idea that I would land up in the energy field. It
mm,
was, and during those times, campus placement, typically L&T and Telco used to be the blue chip companies.
yeah,
They used to come around 6 months before passing out, got through Tata Motors. And yeah, it started off, didn't like Tata Motors, shifted to Thermax. But I would say my energy journey started off from ABB. If you would recall, way back in 1992, when Government of India sort of liberalized the power sector, so
yeah.
practically every company across the world came into India.
Mm,
You had, I still remember Percy Barnwick at that time, who
yeah,
was the CEO of ABB,
ABB.
and Jack Welch, who was the CEO of GE. So they were the two guys who were sort of uh, uh, had a view with respect to how the energy field would go in. So I wanted to join one of these two companies. I was in Thermax at that point of time. Great company, Thermax. I never wanted to leave, but I thought that this is the time that when I should make a change. So
Mm,
between ABB and GE, fortunately, I got a job in ABB,
mm,
and that's where my journey with respect to energy started.
mm,
I also spent around 13 odd years in Wärtsilä, which was more a decentralized energy as compared to centralized energy, which ABB was looking at.
mm.
But I think the company which gave me a full exposure of coal-based, gas-based, hydro, coal mine was Tata Power, and then renewables in front of.
Mm,
So I would say the change came in when I joined ABB.
mm,
It was sort of reinforced when I joined Tata Power,
mm.
but the renewable part started off in 2014 with Fortum.
Amazing, amazing. And as you were talking and talking about Percy Barnevik, I remember I met him 3 years in a row at Davos
Is
in
it?
93,
Oh,
94, and 95. And he used to chair many sessions, so I met him. Quite an amazing leader. Uh, Tell me, you're also very, very involved in sustainability. Can you share a turning point in your career when your belief in sustainable growth was truly tested?
I think if I were to go back, there were times when we were setting up thermal power plants and we were also sort of setting up coal mines.
Hmm.
And then I used to go to hinterland, Jharkhand, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh. There I found for the first time that when we were doing land acquisition, although there is a framework, you are doing land acquisition, you are doing environmental studies, there are some, I would say, collective environmental discussions also happen. Uh, there were water issues as well. I was not too sure that whether we were obviously doing the right things, but I was not too sure whether everybody was happy. In a sense that at number of times I felt that villagers were unhappy because for villagers, even if the land that we were acquiring
Hmm.
didn't give any sort of agricultural produce to them,
Hmm.
still it was an identity for them.
Hmm.
And there was a huge difference between what a corporate thought that we are developing and what a villager felt was meant by development.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
think uh, there wasn't any right and wrong answers, but I felt that villagers were not happy. We were also sort of happy, sort of unhappy, and I was not too sure that where to draw the line, uh, what would be sustainable.
Yeah.
Uh, you had an issue where if I were to go by exactly rule book and to satisfy each and everything which a villager wanted.
Hmm.
Probably it would have taken 10 years to build a coal plant, and
Fascinating.
it had to be sort of built in 4 years. So I
Hmm.
think it was give and take, but I still felt that we're not giving back to the communities as much as we are taking away from them.
Hmm.
So I
Fascinating.
would say the turning point was, when was it? 2008.
Hmm. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about energy technology sustainability and maybe one or two questions about your company, Fortum. For my viewers and listeners, Sanjay, tell me what is the kind of work Fortum does in India?
See, Fortum typically has three pillars of businesses in India.
Hmm.
Renewables remain a large pillar for Fortum in India. And when I talk of renewables, it was essentially solar, solar plus wind, and at some point of time, solar plus wind plus battery storage as well. We are also into EV charging infra space. Uh, if I were to sort of take a step back, Fortum believed that while from 2010 to 2025, renewables would sort of move forward and they would keep moving forward.
Hmm.
But there would come a time when electric vehicles would become a mainstream,
Hmm.
which would be, we felt, and we still believe is between 2025 to 2030. We felt that electric vehicles are at a stage where renewable was in 2012.
Right.
So there would be a cusp which would come. It's
Hmm.
like the ketchup bottle, meaning you
Hmm.
keep on pushing the ketchup, and one
Yeah,
fine day it sort of flows out.
correct.
So we wanted to be ready for that space. And we also felt that beyond 2030, biofractionation would be the main theme, meaning biofuels.
Hmm.
So we are in renewables, which is solar and wind hybrid, electric vehicle charging infra, and we are setting up large bioethanol refinery
Hmm.
in Northeast, which is Numaligarh. That's
Hmm.
a 50% joint venture with Numaligarh refinery,
Hmm.
where we will convert bamboo into bioethanol, furfural alcohol, and acetic acid. And
Hmm.
that ethanol would be then mixed with petrol and sold by Numaligarh Refinery Limited.
Amazing. And what does sustainability mean? I've spoken to many people, and there are lots of checklists in sustainability.
Hmm.
What does it mean in Fortum and to you, and how do you embed it into your organization culturally?
Okay, I'll go by examples. For example, sustainability to me uh, would mean that, let's start off with, when we are constructing a plant, and typically a solar plant gets constructed in around 13 months,
Mhm.
and there is a time of around 4 months when the migrant labor comes in.
Yeah.
And typically, nobody creates a colony, a safe place, dignity of labor for these migrant
Right.
laborers.
Right.
Uh, Porto was the first one where we spend something extra. When you are setting up 1,000 crore plant, I think spending around a crore of rupees for making a modular migrant labor colony
Mm.
where they have access to clean water for drinking as well as for washing.
Mm.
They have access to creches. They have access to smokeless chula. I think uh, we were able to provide them, and
Mm.
as a result, what happened was that never ever we faced any issues with respect to our construction schedules. So I would say this is what I would mean by sustainability.
Mm.
We, for example, in renewable plants, you require a lot of water
Mhm.
to wash the solar panels and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
We felt how to reduce this amount of water. So we were the first one to sort of, I would say, absorb the robotic cleaning system, which doesn't require any water. So small things like
Mm.
this,
Very
uh,
interesting.
not big CSR efforts, but in a way, dignity of labor, how to save water. For example, for the villagers, typically in land acquisition, the way of working was that you give money to the aggregator,
Mm.
then the aggregator gives money, the land aggregator gives money to the villagers,
Mm.
and typically land aggregator would get more money from us
Mm.
than he gives it to the villagers.
Right.
We made sure that we ask the land aggregator that, well, we will pay you your money, so don't
Mm.
worry about it.
Mm.
But with respect to the villagers, we would do direct transfer.
Very
So
well.
So from that perspective, I think the
Great
villagers are
response.
always satisfied. Yeah.
But Sanjay, I've spoken to so many different people, and they say sustainability is important, but so is profitability.
Yes.
And at Fortum, you seem to have, achieved some amazing returns. How do you
Yeah.
balance profitability with sustainability when it comes to large scale projects?
I think first of all, it's more of a mindset.
Correct.
Uh, these are not mutually exclusive, meaning
Yeah,
profitability and sustainability.
correct.
Uh, I would give you an example.
Hmm.
We were able to do each and every of our project within time, within budget, and with all the safety precautions. And I would say that because of this, we never had any attrition as far as our contractual manpower is concerned.
Hmm.
So as a result, what happens is that when you have close to around 1,800 people at site,
Hmm.
many times people come and go.
Hmm.
When the new people come in, you need to sort of train them for 3 4 days before they actually go to the site.
Hmm.
So the productivity and the efficiency goes down. So I would say that because of all of this, whether it was making up of a colony, whether how we did land acquisition, so
Hmm.
the villagers never came in, they never sort of sat in front of our power plant that we would not allow people
Yeah.
to go in. So our
Hmm.
plants, even during the COVID times, they were running on full capacity. We had strong EHS guidelines. So as a result, I would say for the last 9 million working hours, for the last 13 years of Fortum in India, we
Hmm.
never even had a medical case
Hmm.
amongst our contractual labor or direct labor or people who are on our rolls, meaning it was
Hmm.
completely accident free. And as a result, what happens is that this gets reflected into our credit rating. Because our credit ratings are better, we used to get at least a 50 basis point lower interest rate
Hmm.
from the various lending agencies.
Yeah.
Also, you have bilateral agencies, for example, KfW or
Hmm.
European Investment Bank. They used to get a subsidized credit lines,
Hmm.
and because of that, we used to access it. So I think all of this put together, finally, when we were doing capital recycling, we always got a higher multiple, as they call it, on our EBITDA compared to a
Hmm.
comparable
Very
renewable
interesting.
plant.
Yeah.
So I think
Great
we never
response.
faced any sort of conflict over there.
Great response. Thank you. When I was reading about you and preparing for my conversation, I was also fascinated with your charge and drive platform. Tell me a little bit about this and what innovations make this charge and drive platform scalable and investment attractive.
See, a couple of things there. Typically, everybody, and that's the mistake which many of the charging infra guys have made in India as well. They think it's a infra business, but actually, if you see, it's actually a consumer business.
Correct.
Consumer business in a sense that you cannot treat it like an infra business. There are people who come, who charge. They would like to see how heavy the charging gun is. They would like to see how quickly they'll be billed, or how easy is the billing, how effective is the billing, and whether the whole charging experience is intuitive, which
Hmm.
basically means that we had to do a lot of work at the front end and the back end as well.
Hmm.
Back end more from perspective because all of our charging stations are unmanned. So you
Hmm.
need to have remote monitoring. You need to sort of figure out based on data
Hmm.
what are customer preferences, which chargers in which location works the best. Number of times your intuition might be saying something else, but the data says something else.
Hmm.
So I would say that it's more of a consumer behavior which drives EV charging infra than just putting up boxes, connecting it to the electricity,
Yeah.
and doing sort of an infra-like business.
Correct.
So you need to change your mindset.
Hmm.
And typically, utilities never had a consumer mindset. They've
Yeah.
always felt that, look, we generate electricity and that's the end of the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
So for a utility to become customer focused, I think that was a challenge in our EV
Yeah,
infrastructure.
absolutely. And that is such a major change. But you were just telling me about data analytics and EV infrastructure. My next question is about that. What role digital solutions and data analytics play in managing EV? I use the word infrastructure, but EV needs of consumers.
Yeah, so I think, for example, as I said, the ease of billing, how billing can be made easier, how effective it is, how much charging cycle typically a car needs. Uh, so we could sort of communicate, we could talk with the customer because we know the load profile of the battery which is there in the customer car, and we could sort of predict how their battery is sort of behaving, whether it needs a charging. We would also introduce the queuing system, uh, that whether, for example, if you are away from a charger, you will get to know whether there are charging slots open or not, whether you want to reserve a charging slot there or not. So it is all, I would say, data analytics and AI enabled as we move progressively,
Hmm.
because simply all of those charges would be unmanned,
Hmm.
and everything has to be done from backend and remote. So
Yeah,
obviously the analytics per se
very
uh,
true.
would sort of form a very important role there.
But do you see AI and automation transforming renewable on energy operations in the future?
Oh yes. So see, let's get to the basics, that what is the issue with renewables?
Hmm.
The issue with renewables is that we don't know, in spite of all the meteorological data,
Hmm.
we don't know much about solar radiation, and we don't know much about how the wind flows.
Hmm.
So it requires a huge tons of data. Just to give you an example, I would say that if you go to Karnataka, the cloud movement is such in Karnataka that within 2 minutes, you could have one of your inverters which could be generating 2 megawatts and 100 kilowatts as well. So, in
Hmm.
a sense, that it just because of the cloud movement, and when you have connected it, such plants to the
Hmm.
grid has got a system called as deviation settlement mechanism,
Hmm.
meaning you need to sort of tell to the grid a day in advance on a 15-minute cycle that how much would you produce.
Hmm.
Now, if you just sit back and do like this, you will land up paying penalties after penalties.
Right.
And so you need to have forecasting techniques, and based on forecasting techniques, you need to figure out how much you are able to generate on a day ahead basis, how the cloud movement would take place. What happens is that, again, solar is there from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the morning,
Hmm.
but wind can also blow from 6 o'clock in the morning till 8,
Yeah.
and in the evening from 6 to 10:30, which are
Hmm.
the peak load time.
Correct.
So you need to have a load profile, and based on forecasting and load profile, I think this thing would be far more important in renewables
Hmm.
as compared to a coal-based plant, because renewables essentially depend on solar irradiation and when the wind would be sort of flowing. So
Hmm.
that would be more important, and
Well
we've
said.
started using that. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. Let's now talk a little bit about the environment, and you do a lot of work in this area as well. But what is your approach to ensuring environmental compliance across diverse Indian geographies?
Yeah. So as I said, that with respect to environmental compliance, we are very clear that whether we are operating in Karnataka or Rajasthan or wherever, although renewables, for example, are not by law required to do a baseline study, a
Hmm.
baseline sociological study,
Hmm.
that how this renewable plant, if it comes in, how it would impact the uh, sort of sociology around it. But we always do it.
Hmm.
We don't have a sort of a, I would say, cookie cutter approach to only this we would do with respect to communities.
Hmm.
The communities in Karnataka need something else as compared to communities in Rajasthan or communities in Madhya Pradesh. So
Hmm.
all our systems are planned accordingly. You would have sort of water management systems different in different sort of states. So
Hmm.
I would say that a company needs to be flexible and should not be sort of uh, slave to its own way of working,
Correct.
that we will do only this way and we will not do any other way. So I think there are times when you have communities where they require lots of labor to be deployed, and we have deployed labor at that point of time. So that, as I said, once you have decided that your bottom line is that you need to give it to the community more than you take away from the community. So I think each and every decision of yours, if you go by this filter, the chances are your decisions would become better and better and better over a period of time.
Interesting. Fascinating. I have time for two more questions for you.
Yes.
How do you engage with local communities to ensure inclusive environmental outcomes?
Okay, so uh, I would say again, if you break it up, all the communities, there are different communities,
Yeah,
first of all.
absolutely.
In Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, Gujarat, wherever we have worked, they have a different approach towards land acquisition when we are doing land acquisition. They have a different approach towards, I would say, religious symbols, as they call it. So wherever we are, we try to preserve the cultural heritage of that place, and we are sensitive to the needs of those people. I think number of times what happens is that you're a person or a company is not sensitive to the individuals wherever at the site. And so, for example, somebody would come around and say that, look, I want to acquire this land. This is the money that I'm giving you. And when I talk about environment, I'm also talking about how do you engage with the communities in a sense that, and when you are doing land acquisition, it might require that you sit down with the families. The families have their own genealogy. There are issues with respect to how male and female are sort of treated within a family, how whose signature is more important, and so on and so forth. We don't force people to sort of land up in these sort of disputes. We treat everybody equally. As I said, that in all our migrant labor plants also, uh, and wherever we set up a colony, we made sure that we also put in creches because we encourage women labor also to come in, because women from nearby villages should also come and work. And they have this issue with the sort of where do they keep the children. We also had teachers who would keep the children occupied. Then we had this issue that most of the respiratory diseases are because of chula. So we sort of sourced smokeless chulas, and we made sure that they cook all the vegetables and food on smokeless chulas. For example, in Karnataka during malaria days, we found that there is a lot of water puddle which is there. In fact, in only in our plants, and we were also sort of certified by the government of Karnataka, we never had any cases of malaria because we made sure, educated the people that this is what happens if the puddle of water are there. So small, I would say it's no rocket science. These are small things which are more related to specific communities, and unless and until you sit down with them and figure out what is a pain area for them, you would never be able to sort of address them or reach out to their heart and soul. So you cannot have an MP sensibilities pushed down on Rajasthan communities, or Rajasthan community sensitivities pushed down on Karnataka communities. And this can only happen if you sort of be patient, sit down with them, discuss it out. And I'll again come back. This, when you were saying sustainability and profitability, it pays back because all the villagers are with you all the time. And they feel that our success is their success and their success is our success. Unfortunately, we forget this at times.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Thank you. Great response. And my last question to you, what, in your view, are your top priorities to to create a truly resilient and climate conscious energy future for our country?
Okay, so I would say that we've already sort of okay. So there are various philosophies which are going around as of now. One is that when we talk of renewables, these are essentially electrons, and we would slowly move towards from electrons to molecules. When I say molecules, there would come a time when renewables would become cheaper and cheaper, and then renewables would become enabler for creating something new. Meaning, we would decarbonize steel, we would decarbonize cement, we would have sustainable aviation fuel, and so on and so forth, green hydrogen, for example. So I would say that we started off with solar, and then came wind, then we did solar plus wind hybrid. Then we felt that we still were left out, that what happens when the sun is not shining and wind is not blowing. So we bought in battery.
Yeah.
So we had solar plus wind plus battery. Then we felt that, okay, how can this change? How do we produce cement and steel? Then hydrogen came in, which would replace gray, black hydrogen that way. And then you will also have a sustainable aviation fuel, because we've not touched biofuels as of now. So biofuels would also come in.
Correct.
And when I talk about biofuels, I think again we would move towards biofractionation. Biofuels have traditionally been used for burning, for example, biomass or biofuel to generate steam or to generate electricity. And these are very inefficient ways to use biomass. Biomass, if you go by chemistry, you can divide it into cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin.
Right.
And if you make products of these three, they are far more valuable than steam and electricity. So I think there would be a move towards this as well, including sustainable aviation fuel.
Amazing. And on that note, Sanjay, just want to say what an amazing conversation this has been for me. I mean, I thought I understand a little bit about sustainability and energy, but your conversation with me is an amazing 101 on energy, on sustainability, and on all the amazing things that are happening with technology in this sector. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.